kinds of things are benefited, are not only just what someone puts, but are benefited by the way the algorithm amplifies them. That creates, in my opinion, a responsibility of the platform.
Yeah, so when it's being amplified, like, so if you have something that goes viral.
When it's popular.
Right, right. You know, when it's popular, it's going viral, it's up to that platform to stop it, to squash it. It's just like we've seen, you know, like we saw in the story we featured earlier about Pfizer, you know, and how in cahoots they are with big tech. And so when they want to scrub something, just get on the phone to their friends at Google, and they're like, hey, can you scrub this off the internet? There's some people talking trash about us here. You know, all that money we funneled to you through advertising and everything, we're going to pull that advertising. Can you please scrub the internet of these guys? So it works. It's just really troubling.
So my fear is, you know, with all of this is, if this does make its way into federal law, like they are able to say, okay, these are the things that we consider hate right now at this point, and this is a federal law. At that point, what do Rumble, what do Locals, what do those platforms do? Can they do anything? If it's even if it's hosted on their own server, does it have to be behind a paywall, a private login? Like, what is going to be the things that they can do to keep free speech alive? Like, this is something that could ultimately take it down if this is allowed to move forward, right?
Right. I mean, because you're seeing, the thing is, you know, the United States has free speech, you know,
not
the
anymore.
First Amendment, but the United Nations does not.
It's been about 150 years or more.
As we have these discussions about the future of the world, nation states are obsolete. So that is not a concern for these globalists anymore. Like, oh, you've got boundaries, you've got borders, who cares? We're the World Health Organization, so give us the power. We're the United Nations, give us the power. We will set the laws, set the agendas, and if you, little country over there, decides to do it some way, well, that's on you. And you're going to be adherent to the larger global laws, and that's where we're heading. So we'll see how long free speech actually stands. We can see that it's already crumbling in the United States. I mean, do you really think we have free speech that much anymore? I mean, really?
Exactly.
I don't. I mean, we have it in part, but at the end of the day, when big tech actually controls everything, it's the power center, not Washington, then who... You can stand on your balcony and yell like you're, what's his name from the movie Coming to America, at your neighbors, but no one can hear you, right? If a tree falls in the woods, no one can hear you because all these social media platforms have shut you down and you've been debanked because of something you said. Is that truly free speech anymore?
No, well, and Phoenix Snake in the chat says that we're triggering their strife, so we're just going to have to end this segment. Because that's, you know,
just gonna let them roll through like this,
like people like, you're triggering my strife and we have to stop, otherwise they can like charge us with strifing people.
Strifing people. Move over, instead of strife, move over to strife. I'm going to start my own.
So I don't have to keep going in and out with the camera, moving the camera around. We're just going to watch this roll of imagery
Somebody hold my
come
beer.
through.
I'm going to say something really
Small,
strifeful
large,
Strifeful
all
things.
directions.
Next, I'm going to also, I'm going to open up my own app called Chapped.
Image within image.
Chapped and strifed. Chapped and strifed. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yeah.
We'll get ready for annual COVID shots thanks to the FDA and the CDC. On January 26th last week, the FDA Advisory Committee held a meeting. Mainstream media largely ignored the story, and the vote was on annual vaccines. And not surprisingly, they voted to let you skip the original vaccine and go straight to getting those COVID booster shots once a year. So what does it actually mean to skip that initial shot? I think this message is quite muddy. Well, children and older Americans would be able to get more than one booster per year. You can double up if you want. Dr. Jennifer Smith is a virologist. She has 3 degrees in microbiology with a PhD in microbiology and molecular cell sciences. She spent her career studying respiratory viruses, particularly the flu. And Dr. Smith joins me now. Doctor, great to meet you. Welcome to Redacted.
Hi, thanks for having me today and giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts on the VRBPAC meeting.
Yeah, so this meeting was interesting, right? It kind of went by quietly. It's not all wrapped up yet, but unanimously they came out and said, hey, we're all on the same page here. So the FDA advisory group that had this meeting, they're supposed to have our interests at heart, right? They're supposed to care about us. So at a high level, a 30,000-foot level, do they have any conflicts of interest? at all before they started this meeting? Is Big Pharma pulling their strings in any kind of way, or are they totally impartial and they just have our health in their minds?
Well, as you know, it's supposed to be an independent committee. However, a majority of the members, they're either clinicians or they have ties to pharma. So a lot of them are connected with other agencies as well, like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which we know the conflict there. So yeah, these are people who don't really have the expertise to talk about this type of subject.
So they don't have the expertise to talk about the subject. They're being influenced by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation with funding and big pharmaceutical companies. So they come out with this decision to move basically away from a monovalent shot, the original shots that we were all told to get, and then also go and get boosters. So now we're getting rid of the original shots, just moving right to the boosters. Is that right?
Correct. That's what they're advocating for. So what's been really interesting to me is that they have still been recommending these injections at all, given that the original Wuhan strain has been extinct for quite some time. So it doesn't really make sense, even with the supposed bivalent shots that they recommended, because, as I said, this virus has been extinct for a very long time. You also have to remember that a majority of the world has now been exposed to the virus and has some type of immunity, either from infection, recovering from infection, or from these injections. So I'm not really certain why the continued need for any kind of shots for COVID.
Can I give you a need? Can I give you my thought on what the need is? It's just money, is it not? I mean, right? I mean, hate to be cynical, but that's what it comes down to. If Big Pharma is influencing this, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation involved in this, and we don't even have them approved yet, right? These are still emergency use authorized vaccines. So now this is going to be a yearly thing, and we don't even have full approval yet?
Right. So that's actually the most disturbing point for me, is these are still only under EUA, emergency use authorization. What that means is there has to be an emergency declaration in order to deploy these injections. I won't even call it a vaccine because it just simply is not meet the definition of a vaccination. So if there is no emergency, which the President of the United States has already said last fall that the pandemic is over, there is no emergency for annual injections.
So if there's no emergency and they don't have, and these things are not approved yet, then why are they still in this status? Why have they not been moved up to approval status yet? As a virologist, and you look at these different medications and vaccines or not vaccines, this seems to me the next logical step here. But it seems like they're going to be stuck in this black hole in perpetuity, no?
Well, that's a very good question. Why, if these injections are so great, why are they not getting fully FDA licensed?
Right.
That's something that people really need to think about.
What does it mean to be fully vaccinated anymore?
That's another great question. And I really see, first it was getting the first 2 shots, the first 2 injections, and then getting the 3rd injection. And now there's like a bivalent injection. So I see the definition of fully vaccinated being changed yet again as they move to this supposed annual
I
injection
think I might see body
schedule.
imagery here.
Well, doctor, they did test these on 8 mice. So we do have, I mean, are you concerned? These trials, we really don't have any trial data on this at all. 8 mice, I'm not being facetious here. That was the bivalent testing results of 8 mice.
Correct. Well, that shows you how this agency is just being bought, because mice, first of all, are not the correct model to be used to study these injections, because they don't have the same receptors as humans. So mice are the completely wrong model to be used to study these injections. And not having the full data. We all know that we're in a global clinical trial for mRNA therapeutics. So they're using humans really as the guinea pigs in all of this. And there was a committee member, I remember saying that when giving this to children, that they're just going to have to give it to them to find out what happens. So they're literally using children as the guinea pigs.
It's awful.
It's very disturbing. It's very disturbing. We normally have years of data past FDA approval before even recommending some of these drugs and treatments for pregnant women, for children. So now, instead, they're not even going to be doing clinical trials anymore. They're just going to be changing the mRNA injections without providing any clinical trial or any data, and it's just going to be rolled out to the human population.
When did you, or did you, as a virologist, you've been knee deep in this for years. You have close ties, I imagine, with people who work in infectious diseases and so forth. Was there a point at which you
I've seen
your
body
faith
imagery
in
in
the
there.
CDC, the FDA? Was there a moment maybe
So I
during the
lost the
pandemic when that
face.
happened, or do you still have faith in these organizations?
You know, I'll be honest with you. My dream job was always to work at the CDC. That was my goal all through high school, through college. I just thought that was the world premier public health institution. And I went to graduate school in Georgia because I wanted to be close to the CDC so I could get a job there when I graduated. I mean, I really worked hard for years to connect with people at CDC. I had collaborations at CDC. And now I don't want to be anywhere near that institution at all. I mean, I think it's really sad. There are definitely people who are very intelligent, who are very good at their job, who are I had colleagues who were very upset even when they rolled out the PCR testing from CDC because of the lack of quality control. And there were people who actually left CDC over that. So, you know, I think that they've been compromised. I think that their integrity has definitely been damaged, and just the lack of actual public health coming out of the CDC is really disheartening. It's very disheartening to see.
That's really disturbing. That's really disturbing. I feel the same way in journalism. You know, I had dreams and desires to work for certain big, mainstream media organizations when I was younger, and I thought that's the be all end all of it. Then you realize how compromised they are, and how bought and paid for they are, and how it's really disturbing and it's disheartening. Some of your innocence gets lost in a bit of way. Speaking of innocence, right now we're seeing a lot of children. I mean, we just got notes today from our children's school about strep in the school, and my two of my children are home from school today, coughing and everything, and it's just been everyone I've been talking to has been sick. What are you seeing right now when we talk about this is just the flu? When we hear about COVID is the flu, or as a specialist who has studied the flu for many years, what do you make of that? What do you think when right now we're seeing a lot of this outbreak? Is it COVID related, totally separate, or are they now joined together?
Are you talking about COVID and flu?
Yeah, COVID and flu. I mean, because I've heard in fact from clinic specialists saying, well, what you might have is COVID, but you also might have this, and now it's just sort of lumped in as part of a regular winter time. Everyone's got the sniffles.
Right. So it's really difficult to tease out. We know that flu is seasonal in most areas. Now in tropical regions, it's year-round. Like in Hawaii, where I was, it's year-round influenza season. The problem is with this new disease, SARS-CoV-2, has now become endemic. So usually all respiratory viruses are seasonal. So they come and they go. We have peaks of when they're being transmitted. But it's really too early in the endemic phase with SARS-CoV-2 to determine the seasonality. We've seen cases peak in the summertime. We've seen cases peak in the wintertime. So it's really difficult to tell right now what the seasonality is going to be with SARS.
We're still at the beginning of this, but unbelievable. We'll stay on top of this. Dr. Jen Smith, we appreciate you joining us on this. We'll kind of watch how this voting goes. This is not final yet, right? They have a June vote on this to make this official yet, or where are we at on the FDA voting on these annual boosters?
Right. So this is the committee. The VRPAC committee makes recommendations to CDC and FDA. So the CDC ACIP committee has to meet and make the determination as well. But they usually follow right along lockstep with the VRPAC decision. So we'll look to see that FDA and CDC will both go ahead and approve this annual injections for COVID.
Unbelievable. Doc, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate your insights on this. And we Germans should heed the warning of one of their most famous socialists, Karl Marx. I never thought I would quote Karl Marx here on the show, but maybe Germans should actually pay attention to one of their own. When Karl Marx, who famously said, "History repeats itself, first as a tragedy and second as a farce." Let that sink in for a minute, because I've heard this phrase many, many years. And it kind of creeps up, and you kind of, it's one of those things where you kind of scratch your head a little bit, you think about this. History repeats itself, first as tragedy, second as farce.
Mm-hmm.
So, the first time in war when we met, Russians, Germans, Russians destroyed Germany. We divide up Berlin in the east and west. We crushed your army. Tens of millions of people died as a result of what Germany did.
Who's we in this instance?
I'm just saying that, the collective West, but of course, the collective we being Russia in this scenario. I'm not saying we are
Russia
Russians.
is part of the West.
I'm just using it as a rhetorical sort of a narrative device.
Okay. I'm trying to follow you.
Yeah, so Russia loses, Russia's, tens of millions of people, of course, died.
45 million.
45 million.
Yeah.
So 45, just a paltry, 45 million people die from what Germany decided to do. Now, the second time you repeat the same mistake, and what will happen to your country now? Will it become a farce? So what will happen when Russia decides to retaliate against a growing German threat? We're about to find out, because Germany just today openly declared war on Russia. This isn't a backroom conversation, some low-level peon, some low-level person. No. This is the German foreign minister. Oddly, speaking in English, this is Annalena Baerbock, oddly speaking in English for all the world to hear, even though she was at the Euro Council meeting, which there's no English-speaking country represented at the Euro. So she's speaking in English so we can all hear how she feels about this war, openly declaring that Germany is now at war with Russia. Listen.
And therefore, I've said already in the last days, yes, we have to do more to defend Ukraine. Yes, we have to do more also on tanks. But the most important and the crucial part is that we do it together and that we do not do the blame game in Europe, because we are fighting a war against Russia and not against each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Minister.
She's not speaking, though, only for Germany. She's speaking for all European countries.
Yeah.
Saying all European countries are at war with Russia.
We are in a world war with Russia. We are at war with Russia. Not Ukraine is at war with Russia. We are at war with Russia. Those were her words. And this, of course, many Germans were quick to freak out about this, rightly so. Of course, we've seen a lot of protests across Germany saying down with this, absolutely not. And now they're calling for her immediate resignation. Will it happen? Of course not, because she's a stooge of the deep state. She's perfect for them. Russia responded, saying, hey, the ball's in your court now. Want to keep escalating things because this is going to go nuclear. This, of course, is the same nutjob who told Germans that she will put Ukraine first no matter what German voters think or how hard their lives get. Watch.
But if I give a promise to people in Ukraine, we stand with you as long as you need us, then I want to deliver. No matter what my German voters think, but I want to deliver to the people of Ukraine. And this is why, for me, it's important to be always very frank and clear. And this means every measure I'm taking, I have to be clear that this holds on as long as Ukraine needs me. We are facing now winter time where we will be challenged as democratic politicians. People will go on the street and say, we cannot pay our energy prices. And I will say, yes, I know, so we help you with social measures. But I don't want to say, okay, then we stop the sanctions against Russia. We will stand with Ukraine, and this means the sanction will stay also in wintertime, even if it gets really tough for politicians.
Yeah, so we don't care. We don't care about you, citizens. It doesn't really matter. What we care about, of course, is Ukraine.
And she's making a unilateral statement. She's saying, I gave my word. This is what I want. Other people may not want it, but I like the idea of this, and I'm sticking with it. It's very self-centered.
Yeah. So screw you. It doesn't matter what, you can't pay your energy bills. We're sticking with Ukraine. My voters. I don't care. So Russia fired back. Of course, Putin's ally, Russian President Medvedev, invites Biden and Schultz to stop the doomsday clock ticking. Germans are outraged by this overall, of course. And here's a German response to this. So here's a German who says she has to immediately step down. It's one thing to support an allied country, which I guess is already a stretch of the term, but how could one be that irresponsible when choosing one's words? The most important thing to do is avoid a direct conflict, not to embrace it. German politician Marianne Harder-Kunel says this, posted this, and the translation is, what Erbach expresses here is a de facto war to Russia. In this war, she wants to pull all Europe in. She carelessly risks human lives. Whom does this woman serve? Not us to do it, he said. But apparently the German people don't matter much to these politicians because Olaf Scholz has done an about-face and is now sending Leopard tanks. As he makes this announcement, he asks the German people to trust him. This is like an unbelievable statement he makes. He asks the German people to trust him and his federal government after, wait a minute, you told us you didn't want us to elevate a war in Ukraine and send Leopard tanks. We ignored you. Now I want you to trust me. Listen.
Es gibt in diesem Land viele Bürgerinnen und Bürger, die sich Sorgen machen.
Did not want us to send tanks into Ukraine because you don't want this to descend into World War III, and then of course Germany gets attacked and we're destroyed, right? You, the German citizen, said you didn't want this overwhelmingly.
Yes.
We ignored you. We're doing it anyway. Now I'm asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to put your faith in the federal government that this won't descend even further, because he says we put controls into place to make sure that our country doesn't go in the wrong direction. Have you been to Germany lately? Have you seen what direction Germany is going? Where people can't pay their heating bills? You've turned off nuclear power in favor of coal power plants?
Protests in even small towns, anti-war protests, saying, we do not want this. We absolutely don't support it.
Your Nord Stream pipeline is blown up by your allies, and you know this, and you have the answers to this, but you won't release it? You won't release the information on this, and now you're paying exorbitant costs for natural gas? Wait a minute, you let the United States and its allies blow up the Nord Stream pipeline, where you could get cheap natural gas from Russia. Now you're paying 4 times as much, or even in some cases 7 times as much, for the same product shipped from the United States now.
And reverting to coal.
Yeah. But don't worry, our country's going in the right direction. Like, this is madness.
Right, and this just trust me a little bit more when there's no real answer there. When we could tell that he, at least gave pause earlier in this week, saying maybe we don't do this. Maybe we hold back a little, the people don't seem to want it. And then, oh, no, full steam ahead. So whatever pressures were put in place that made him capitulate, we're not quite sure, but we don't get an answer on it at all.
He literally, it's amazing. He literally says there are many citizens in our country who are concerned about this decision to send tanks to Ukraine and about the size of these weapons. And he goes on to say, so I would like to tell those citizens here and now you should trust the federal government more.
That's what Jacinda Ardern said within the last few years, and now she's, on the runway.
Yeah, she's on the run. Who knows what the hell's it? She's like shopping for new underwear. Russian leaders and media personalities went after Schultz today. Here's just one example from Vladimir Solovyov. He hosts a very popular show in Russia. Watch this. Read the subtitles of this.
По-моему, пора послать четкий решительный сигнал, что мы считаем Германию стороной конфликта, и появление немецких танков однозначно приведет к тому, что мы будем считать территорию Германии, военные базы и прочие объекты законными целями. НАТО хочет повоевать так хитрым образом, делая вид, что не воюет, не дождетесь. Не дождетесь. И Писториус войдет в историю, как один из кретинов, которые привели к тому, что территория Германии оказалась в зоне прямого поражения. И Шольц, и Бербок. И немецкий народ будет знать, каких очередных нацистских лидеров они воспитали и привели к власти. Это мое субъективное мнение. Мы агрессор. 8 лет вы, сволочи, подпитывали нацистский украинский режим. 8 лет вы убивали жителей Донбасса. 8 лет вы лгали устами вашей Меркель. Вы не видели трагедии Донбасса, убитых детей Донбасса? Европейские фарисеи, подонки нацистские.
Okay, I just want to say their political shows are a little more harrowing than ours.
It's a little bit different than Hannity.
Yeah. That's very intimidating. They don't have...
I mean...
I wouldn't want to be a guest on that show if you get it wrong. They're like, gulag.
Right.
Get out of here.
It's not like a game show. It's not like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Right.
But it's a political talk show.
It's just a little intimidating.
So for those of you who are listening and driving and you're like, I don't know what he was saying. Well, he was basically saying when you put German tanks inside Ukraine, that literally means that, you know what, now Germany is fair game. Like, fair game for us to attack targets inside of Germany. Oh, and by the way, you're claiming that we are the aggressors, he says. You've been lying about what has been unfolding from the Ukrainian aggressors in Donbass for the last 8 years, where a genocide has been carried out.
And another unfortunate part of that is that it kind of goes to the narrative now that they're like, well, once Russia goes into Ukraine, then they're going to go into this country, then they're going to go into this country. But, like, if they do, it's because they're being forced to.
Well, I know. I mean, that's the thing, right? So, if Germany comes in and does a full-scale... I mean, they're launching these Leopard tanks. I mean, they greenlit 100 of them coming through Poland, and Germany on their own is sending the newer versions of them now. Like, that's what that speech is about. So they're sending them. So is the United States with Abrams tanks.
I mean, let's be clear. Neither side has to do either thing. Germany does not have to send these weapons, and Russia does not have to consider this an escalation and then retaliate. Nobody has to do any of these things. This is, I mean, we're operating on a very, like, life as a board game type way at this point, rather than, like, how about we value human life? We're just on a different playing field at this point.
Well, yeah. I mean, and they're operating in a totally different reality. You know, they're denying, of course, or willfully ignorant. And Angela Merkel even talked about this. She knew what was happening in the Donbass. She knew all along that this was an instigation. And that, of course, was leaked recently. So we know that she knew what was happening in this genocide.
How many times does the U.S. have to prove? How many times does the U.S. have to show that they don't value human life? At all.
No,
or we wouldn't be doing what we do.
I think the world is waking up to that. I think maybe the world is waking up to that in a lot of ways. People who just sort of blindly went along with this crap for so long, people who maybe even blindly supported this war from the very beginning, are starting to understand now the truth behind it. Max Blumenthal tweeted this. Since the U.S. destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline supplying cheap gas to Germany, the German Kuckmeister, Olaf Scholz, has retaliated by caving to U.S. demands to send Leopard tanks to Ukraine and asking German citizens to take fewer hot showers. So Scholz even teased further deliveries of air defense systems today, heavy artillery, multiple rocket launchers, he said today, and says Germany intends to expand what we have delivered, a major U-turn on his previous statements. As Michael Tracy pointed out during internal debates, Olaf Scholz pointed out that there is no majority support in Germany for sending battle tanks to Ukraine, he said, thereby overturning 75 years of precedent. But then he did it anyway. After impatience was reportedly growing in Washington, D.C. Oh no, we can't have impatience growing from Washington. So he caved to Washington once again. Here's Der Spiegel reporting in yellow, noting that there is no majority support in German polls for tank deliveries to Ukraine. Now, this is one of the most remarkable pieces of video. I want you to watch this. So, Sky News is doing an interview with Zelensky. And Sky News decides that at this moment, we're going to tell you with a huge smile on our faces that America will be deploying a full battle battalion of Abrams battle tanks to Ukraine. On top of which, these Leopard tanks, Olaf Scholz is sending these Leopard tanks to you. And watch this moment. She gets to break the news. Like, she's so excited from Sky. She's like smiling. Here you go, Vladimir. You're getting your Christmas tanks. Watch.
Leopard 2 tanks are coming from Europe. You must be relieved.
Ще ні. Щойно. Щось? Тільки що? Ну, у мене з Шольцем буде розмова. Ось зараз прес-секретар сказав, що щойно канцлер Шольц підтвердив, що дасть леопарди. У мене зустріч одразу з ним розмова по телефону одразу після нашого інтерв'ю. Я дуже радий і хочу подякувати Німеччині. Я дякую Британії і дякую Сполученим Штатам Америки за те, що вони прийняли такі рішення. Але я вдячний в цілому світу за підтримку України. Але якщо ми говоримо відкрито з вами і чесно, то кількість танків і термін, коли вони можуть до нас доїхати, мають невід'ємну, а важливу роль.
So thank you, but get these things here quickly. We need them, we want them. Just keep sending them to us. Time is critical. Thank you so much. I didn't even know that. I've got a phone call with Olaf a little bit in a few minutes here. So I didn't know that. Thank you so much for that. That's amazing. So we got the Abrams coming. We got the Leopards coming. We got the Challenger tanks coming.
That was like a gender reveal.
Right.
Yeah. I was going to say she missed her opportunity. She missed her opportunity to be like, just reach under your seat.
Right.
It's a tank.
You got a tank. You got a tank.
Just pop this balloon here and we'll see how many bullets come out of it. And that's what you get.
And Vladimir, the answer is you are the father. Where's Maury Povich when you need him? The U.S. also today announcing that America will be deploying a full battalion of Abrams battle tanks to Ukraine. Remember when, I mean, I just can't remember. So we're sending all of these tanks, a full battle battalion of tanks, of Abrams tanks. And by the way, who is going to man these tanks? It's not Ukraine. They don't have the experience for it at all. Who's going to man these things? Of course, it will be Americans, it will be Polish forces, it will be British special forces, it will be NATO forces who've already been there. And of course, the body bags are starting to stack up. So remember when President Biden said this?
The idea that we're going to send in offensive equipment and have planes and tanks and trains going in with American pilots and American crews, just understand, and don't kid yourself, no matter what you all say. That's called World War III. Okay? Let's get it straight here, guys. The whole expression, don't kid a kidder.
We're at war with Russia, and here's the tanks to prove it. So these tanks will show up. We just got reports a few minutes ago that the 100 or so older Leopard tanks are coming in through Poland. Those should be arriving like within the next day or two. And Russia has already said, hey, when these things arrive, they will be destroyed the moment they arrive. So, okay.
What a way to ultimately thank them for what they did in World War II, you know? The Russians liberating and helping them. Like, right. Thanks for the help, but you know what? Now we don't like you.
Right, and these are the same leaders that are telling us that we can't drive gas-driven cars.
Right.
But marching this weaponry, gas-powered weaponry, straight into battle to be released into the atmosphere. So wait till you hear this upcoming report about electric vehicles. It's going to make you even madder when you realize they want you to walk. Like, literally, researchers are saying, yeah, EVs are not going to actually get us where we need to go, but you can start walking more often. We're going to build cities for you to walk. In the meantime, though, gas-driven armory, totally fine.
Well, and by the way, the Abrams tanks are notoriously fuel, what is the word I'm trying to
guzzlers?
Gas guzzlers, but they're fuel incompetent, fuel inefficient. Yeah, they're awful, absolutely awful. So let's send the Abrams in. You know, you can lecture all of us at the World Economic Forum last week when you literally had a panel where you discussed getting rid of our cars. Like we will take away your cars. Great. So, but we'll send you Abrams tanks to kill some people. So that's our double priorities here. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media. Well, something big is about to happen in Ukraine. Either NATO packs its crap up and goes home, gets the hell out of there, because the fall of Ukraine is imminent.
I didn't even pause it because the clouds are moving slowly.
Toward full-scale war with Russia. Let me ask you in the chat right now, those of you watching, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? That NATO is going to say, enough's enough. We've learned our lesson here. This is an absolute mess. We've gotten in way over our heads. We're going to go home. We're going to pick up our basketball and go home. or they're doubling down and going to go full-on, head-on with Russia. So you let me know in the chat what you think is about to happen. So let's flesh this out, because a lot of moving parts over the past 24 hours with a couple of big news items that I want to unpack in a moment. But first, this just happened. So Volodymyr Zelensky in a big address saying that Ukraine needs more weapons. And it needs it faster. So we need more weapons and we need it faster. Now, you'll recall in Ramstein, Germany, just a short few days ago, you know, Ukraine had been asking for 300 tanks and armored vehicles. And they're not getting not even a fraction of that. That's what Zelensky wanted, right? The head of the military in Ukraine wanted 300 at least to launch this massive military offensive that's going to push into Crimea and regain the territory. Getting a fraction of that. The U.S. is going to send like 31 Abrams tanks, and not even for like many, many months by the time they get there. Poland is sending some janky old Leopard tanks that they bought second rate. Portugal is sending like 4 tanks that haven't been working since the 1970s. It's literally like going through their closet and cleaning crap out and handing it to them. So, but then on the other hand, Zelensky's doubling down and asking for way more weapons and faster. And the United States says, hey, we're ready to do this. We're going to be sending some F-16s. We've got a number of additional weapons and other artillery that we're going to be sending you, and money. Of course, we're going to new tranche of money, in addition to different aid. So here's what Zelensky asked for last night.
Ситуація дуже жорстка. Бахмутський, Вугледарський та інші напрямки в Донецькій області – це постійні російські штурми, постійні намагання прорвати нашу оборону.
It's like soothing tones, right? Like you could put that on and fall asleep listening to that, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Like, you know, you listen
I wouldn't want to hear him narrate a horror movie.
Like your calm Zen music, and like you fall asleep. Honey, what are you... I'm just going to put my earbuds in. What are you listening to go to sleep? I'm going to listen to some...
Just close your eyes. Relax.
You're getting very sleepy. I can't even do that. It hurts my throat. So I'm starting to get a sore throat.
Well, you're done.
I'm done. Oh. Zelensky reads your kids bedtime stories. I just was reading a bedtime story to my little girl. I was thinking, like, you know, like I don't know, it was The Prince and the Pauper or something like that. Or Jack and the Beanstalk, you know. And Jack went up the beanstalk. So anyway...
To ask for more money.
Right. Only 3 beans? You give me just 3 beans? What am I going to do with these beans? So what will NATO do? Will they pack up their shit and get the hell out of there? Grab their basketball and go home? No. Doesn't look like it. Because the new, we just got this in, the U.S. Just sending the Apache helicopters, Apache attack helicopters just arrived in Poland. Here they are. They're getting unpacked. Going over our flight checklist here. We're going to make sure they're all ready to go. So all of our new Apache attack helicopters in Poland ready for launch. Ready for launch, ready to take off. Poland is ordering 100 of these from the United States. Where will they use them, I wonder? What's next door to them that they could use as training ground? I wonder. Ukraine is turning into a really great testing ground for weapons. And an amazing admission yesterday, this blows my mind, from the head of NATO. This is the head of NATO's Strategic Council, Admiral Rob Bauer. Now, he gave an interview to a Portuguese station, RTP. Perhaps he didn't think anyone in the U.S. would hear his words. I happen to understand Portuguese and happen to track this video down, and I'm going to share it with you so that the world can see this. Here he is, and I think he just thought he was talking to a Portuguese, audience. 11 million people in Portugal going to see this U.S. Admiral talking about, strong NATO, and we're ready to fight Russia. Yeah, here you go. So here it is. He now says NATO is ready for direct confrontation with Russia. All the pieces are in place. NATO is ready for direct war with Russia, but must transition to a wartime economy. So, okay, let's unpack this. We're ready for a direct assault, a direct face-to-face with NATO, and we need to now transition to a wartime economy. What does that mean? Modeled on U.S. industrial policy framework like we had in World War II. What he says is, those civilian factories, that you're relying on for your civilian stuff, that you civilians need to live your life, what we're going to do is take those civilian factories and we're going to appropriate them for full-time, non-stop military production. Those are his words. Watch.
We are ready to a direct confrontation with Russia.
We are. I think what we have done after the war started was the battle groups along the eastern flank. We had 4 in the north, the 3 Baltic states and Poland, the enhanced forward presence battle groups. We have decided now, the leaders in Madrid have decided to create 4 more battle groups in Slovakia, Hungary, Romania and Bulgaria.
Look at this one that's coming through right here.
And to basically
nose is right here, eye, hairdo up here. Above, see his mouth right here, smile on his face.
Support in terms of fire support and
look
give
at his
them better
hairdo.
stocks for ammunition and other things. So I think that is an important message for the Russians, that our posture has changed,
Cool, huh?
to show them that we are ready if they would have an idea to come to NATO. And that is the red line. If there is any red line, it is the Russians crossing the line of our territory in NATO.
I believe you said that we are ready to scale
It's in
up,
movement
but
too.
that
I
will
usually don't do this in
require
movement.
some focus.
Usually pause
I
it.
believe it was your expression.
Getting
What do
pretty
you
good
mean
at
by
it.
that?
I said that with regard to industrial capacity,
Okay.
the defense capacity. Because I think what we see on both sides is there's high use of ammunition. There's a lot of destruction in terms of vehicles and tanks and aircraft, and there's a lot of things that require to be bought on both sides to continue the fight in material and in ammunition. So the challenge for both sides is that the industries, the defense industries in the West and in Russia, need to ramp up production. And we basically have an economy now that is just in time, just enough. Everything we do in the West in the last 25 years was based on that idea. Having stocks was not smart because it was dead money. But we now see, so if you order a car, they will start the production after you ordered the car. And we're talking now that, hey, I'm using more ammunition than I thought. I need to take from a warehouse ammunition. So you're talking about stocks. You're talking about things that are there, not because you necessarily needed them, but once you need them badly.
Yeah. So these are the people running the world. Like, these are the geniuses that are going to get us all killed. So this guy from the Netherlands is telling us that it's not enough to just have stocks of ammunition. No. And when you deplete it because you're provoking a war with Russia, you need regular production of armaments to continue this endless war. That's the goal of NATO. We're going to need regular production of this shit.
He also talks as if Russia has already went into NATO land. They've not been anywhere near any NATO-led land because Ukraine's not part of NATO. So what the hell is he talking about?
Again, exactly. And so, but he's saying, basically he's admitting that Ukraine is now a proxy NATO country anyway, right? So that's their red line. Wait a minute. Now the red line is we don't want you attacking NATO countries, but your red line all along has been going into Ukraine and annexing the Donbass. That's been your red line. What the hell is he talking about? Last week, Russia warned that the leaders of NATO have come close to a red line and are deliberately working to escalate the military confrontations in Ukraine. So it's not Russia that's escalating this red line. No, it's NATO that's doing it. Russia Deputy Envoy to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, OSEC, warned that Europe and NATO is on a direct path to a full-blown military conflict in Europe, he said. And that it is one that they would definitely stand to lose, meaning NATO. And you hear NATO talking about it. I mean, they're basically saying, we don't have the ammunition. We've run out of ammunition. The real story and the reason why Germany won't send more Leopard tanks is because they simply don't have them. And they don't have, by the way, it's going to take them years to build up enough capacity of Leopard tanks that they would want. They don't have them. And neither does the United States. We've done multiple stories here on the show about the depleted munitions in the United States. So they want a wartime economy. Let's convert those factories. And isn't it funny to think like we were like, oh, we're fighting the Nazi threat, right? So yes, we will convert our factories. We will take that glove factory in upstate New York and convert it and making material for our troops to fight the Nazis. And now we're literally doing the opposite. Like, isn't it amazing? Like, how has this world changed? We're literally doing the opposite of what we did in World War II. So, over the weekend, we saw yet another attack on civilians in the Donbass. This time, American HIMARS. So you want to know, like, your American weapons that you're providing, the ones that we need to keep ramping up production of, the American HIMARS, was used to attack, in Ukraine, to attack a hospital, another civilian target. Russia was quick to call it a war crime, so here's the hospital. This is just what's left of this hospital in Donbass. Russia called it a war crime. 14 people killed. The Western media totally ignored this story. Are you surprised by that the Western media ignored this story? You know why? Because it wasn't as sexy as that apartment bombing a few weeks ago, right? Because
they couldn't find a way to spin it.
Right. So a couple of weeks ago, when Ukraine blew up that apartment building, the media was quick to jump all over it because, oh, it was Russia. And, you know, Ukraine at first blamed it on Russia. Then the truth came out. We knew all along what had happened. But it didn't matter. It was all over CNN and BBC, and they ran with the story. Look at the atrocities. Look at the atrocities unfolding. And then, of course, that wasn't the case. It was total garbage. And here we have the exact same thing. We have another attack, this time on a hospital, using American weapons. And once again, there's no media coverage of it. The media ignored it. Meanwhile, the RAND Corporation, which is funded by the Pentagon. So this is the other side of the story. You have Zelensky asking for more weapons. You have NATO saying we need to ramp up production and we are ready for a full-scale frontal assault of Russia. We're ready for it. He tells the interviewer, we're ready for it, yet we don't have the weapons for it. How are you ready and you're also not ready? That's like when my kids tell me they've done the chores, but they haven't done the chores. They've taken out the trash, but it's still sitting there, so it's not actually taken out yet. Something's amiss. But now you have the RAND Corporation, this opened my eyes, which is funded by the Pentagon, published a new report saying the war in Ukraine needs to end sooner rather than later. And here's their new policy report. Avoiding a long